Everyone, it is 10 o'clock. It is May 24th, 2023. It's 10 o'clock a.m. and we are at the Brownsville PUB Annex Building. This is an audit committee. I'm glad to have Senator Sines here and Mr. Sampaio. And of course, we appreciate all the staff. It takes time from their work duties to attend this very important meeting. With that in mind, Melly, are you ready to present?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chair, members of the board, Melida Pinales, Director of Internal Audit, and I would like to introduce my staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, do you have new staff?
We have a temporary staff member, Nick, and Mr. Porras is a college intern.
Nick is temporary.
Yes, sir.
You coming from where, Nick? Have you been working here in the city or going to school? Oh, UT Austin. That's just not any school, is it? That's very impressive. Thank you. And the young gentleman, wow.
Yes.
Melly,
Thank you.
looks like you have some good choices. Thank you, guys. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but it's important for us to understand. And of course, I know your other staff member. How long have you been with Audit? 26 years. Hey, that's a good one to have. And 26 years, I think you know where everything's at, right? Maybe. All right, thank you, Melly. Please proceed.
Yes, sir. So on agenda item number 1, we have presentation and discussion of audit reports with findings. So these are the audits that we recently completed that include records management. We had 7 findings in that area. We will come back and do a 6-month follow-up on all of these areas here. We also had the risk insurance management with 5 findings. We also had the Robindale and the South wastewater treatment plants that had 5 and 4. If any of you would like, I can go into details of any of the findings, or we can wait until we do the follow-up.
Thank you.
Any of those findings putting our customers or the quality of our water, or looks like both of them are wastewater. As far as the facilities, both of them are at the wastewater plant. Anything that's putting the community at risk?
No, all of these are internal things that can be addressed within the 6-month period. They are already working on most of them. Just to name some, the departmental work instructions, which, you know, details the day-to-day operations, which are important, especially when you have employee turnover, you have a new staff member coming in, you know, and it's important to have these things documented. Job descriptions, they're already working on that. The facility security access, they're also working on updating that list. The invoices, that one has already have been taken care of, and they're still working on the inventory control. So most of these things are things that will be more than likely implemented within the 6-month follow-up, sir.
Thank you.
And Melly, are you going to go through each one right now?
If you'd like, I can, or like I mentioned, we can wait till the 6-month follow-up.
Okay, so then the purpose of this meeting right now would be to present these.
The follow-up, sir. We're going to focus on the follow-ups, or I can go into detail with these reports.
Well, if you have this before us, I mean, I'd like you to go through a brief.
Okay, yes, sir, I can do that. Yes, sir. So we're going to go ahead and start with records management. During the records management, we did identify seven findings. The very first one has to do with BPUB Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual that references some of those things that are in there that reference directly to records management. So Dr. Guerra, and at the time it was Estrella Solorzano, but now it will be under the supervision of when we hire the new, this gonna fall? General counsel, that will fall under general counsel. So the next one has to do with policies and procedures. Policies and procedures are either outdated or not all inclusive. So they're gonna be working on that. The enterprise content and records management project, that's something also that needs to be looked at. And that's a company-wide project that entails the assistance from management. The storage facility records, that one also, there's room for improvement there together with the records inventory and also on the records retention process. And then the inventory controlled storage unit, those are just cleaning up what's in that room. So that's just an overall recap of what's going on with the records management. I didn't really go into the details of the exact finding or what we recommended or what management responded. But I do want to say that management agreed with all 7 findings and they're already working on that.
Any questions on this particular item? I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
On this first one on records management, one of the things that I'm always looking for stands out is we have a consultant for records management or for we have a consultant for human resources on policies and procedures.
So we did, so that was covered in another audit, which we will be doing a follow-up. And yes, a consultant was hired and Sergio, you're welcome to elaborate on that. A consultant was hired in 2019 for the amount of $30,000 to assist us with all the policies and procedures, specifically only for human resources.
Yes, I understand that.
Yes, sir.
Human resources as a consultant is providing professional consultation. I'd like you to follow up, Melly, and provide us with a report. How long has that consultant been with us and how much, what is their fee structure? What do we pay them? My concern is reading through this is we have a consultant, we have an HR department, but we still have a lot of findings. We still have a lot of issues.
And that will be covered in further slides in the compensation and benefits, which is part of the human resources.
Right.
We will go into the details of how many policies are still pending, how many they plan on doing every fiscal year. They plan on doing 3 policies and 3 procedures out of 40 some. A consultant was hired to come and assist. Management is still reassessing what the consultant provided, but Mr. Delgadillo is welcome to elaborate on any of these things. He's the one that has all the facts. This is just what I can recall of going through documentation and going through that audit.
I've read the information. My concern is that we have consultants, not only this particular area, in other areas, we're paying consultants. We've gone through COVID, but we still haven't, we don't seem to be catching up. We don't seem to be getting compliance. And on this topic, I would also like to mention to the staff or to state this, that, you know, we have a new CEO. I think it's important to be fair and to be prudent as we move forward, that there's a new organizational chart. There are new assignments for management, for directors. I just don't know how, as a board member, I don't know how far this should move forward. And really, we're in the same place. We don't seem to be coming out of all these issues. Not only in this one, I've read through the entire binder. I don't know if 3 months or 6 months, we should have some significant attention to this matter. And then the administration will need to take whatever action they deem is necessary. But, and I want to remind the staff and remind the boards that are here, the board only has 3 primary functions. One, we oversee the CEO, and we oversee auditing. And of course, policy and fiscal management. But I don't know how we're moving forward with the different departments, non-compliance, catching up, COVID. This other department that's in there, it's alarming.
Mr. Rondon, I do want to mention, yesterday I did meet with Ms. Minor, and she's brought up a really good idea, or she wants to implement, at least in her area, and maybe this is something we can do company-wide, where she wants to maintain a log, maybe have her admin have a log of all the pending, and for them to provide her a follow-up status monthly maybe, or it depends the frequency of where we're at and what has been done, instead of waiting, like you mentioned, the 6 months. So I do know our previous assistant GM, Mr. Fernando Sainz, did have that in place. His his executive assistant would do that for all of his division. She kept a running tally of, okay, Ms. Science, where are you at with these three findings? What's the status? Provide me a status. And that was done within that department to ensure that when the 6 months came up, these items were addressed and taken care of. So that I believe that's something very good that's going to help. And hopefully, moving forward, we're not in this situation where we identify all these things, or at least things are taken care of when they are identified.
Please proceed, Millie, with. your
Yes, sir.
presentation.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move on with the risk insurance. Similar findings to the records also. We also have the BPUB Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual, the procedures and work instructions, the property damage assessment reports, the electric and water damage cases, and the records retention process. So these are the things that we identified in this audit, and I can go into any of the findings, elaborate if you wish.
Well, Mr. Sampaio or Ms. Sines, do you have any comments?
Only if you think any of those are critical. No,
These are things that management has already acted immediately, especially on the assessment reports and the damage cases. So those are things that are doable. There is one thing that the CEO did ask for us on the property damage assessments. These we were doing them when we did this audit in risk insurance. We've changed our process to do it every time we do an operation audit to make sure that these things are taken care of. So that's something new that we've done in our department. Okay, moving on to the Robindale and South, like I mentioned, these are things that they're already working on. Most of the things have already or almost about to be finalized.
and again, Millie, none of those findings are related to the quality of the effluent.
No,
or
sir, no, sir. They're in
anything.
compliance with all of their permits. We looked at the permits, we looked at A through Z and all of these other things
Right.
are in compliance, sir.
Okay. And if there were issues that were critical, what steps would you take?
Those need to be reported immediately to the CEO and need to be addressed and taken care of. That's not something that I would wait to bring to the board. That would be addressed immediately.
So we would still be made aware of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. So we're going to go ahead and move on to agenda item number 2, presentation and discussion of follow-up audits, all recommendations implemented. So on the unannounced cash count and the purchasing contracts, we came back and did a follow-up and all items have been addressed. So kudos to those 2 departments. So there's no further action on their part. Any questions before I move on to agenda item number 3?
I'm okay with it.
Okay, sir. Agenda item number 3, presentation and discussion of follow-up audits, recommendations in progress. So for these, we do have these audits that are they still have open items or items in progress. We're going to go ahead and start with the compensation and benefits. On the compensation and benefits, which I was referring to earlier, out of the 4 findings, they've implemented 2 and 2 are still in progress. And that's the one that I was referring to, that they currently have 43 policies that have been converted to the new format. And management has determined that 3 policies and 3 procedures will be finalized each fiscal year. And then that's where we went on to say in the finding that an external consultant had rendered services from April of 2019 through July of 2020 for the amount of $30,000 to assist in identifying these processes. However, management is reassessing the adequacy of the consultant's recommendations. And then also, out of the 43 policies, we did identify that 32 of them are either outdated, not all inclusive, and or not in the BPUB standard format. So on the follow-up, all policies were converted into the new format and they were forwarded to records management for review. And then on the exit process, when we did the audit, we identified that there was numerous inconsistencies with employee files not maintained or incorrect forms filed for the exit process. And on this one, management implemented a separation tracker to ensure all steps in the exit process are followed, and management is working on a formal procedure. So this one for the policies is going to continue to be in progress for the next years. I mean, it's, if you do 3 a year and there's 40 some, you can have Mr. Delgadillo explain that, ma'am.
Well,
You know why we're only doing 3 a year?
that's a
And
good
this is-
question.
And we also have a consultant assisting with us?
I don't, well, that, what I reported was up to 2020. I don't, I need to follow up if we've had that consultant again or if.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. Regarding the consultant, we do not have a consultant. We are tackling that program or that process ourselves. If the hearts of a company, it's the employees, I would say the policies are the soul of a company. So it's a very important endeavor. We did hire a consultant that did propose certain policies to be implemented or updated. And they also propose some procedures. They analyze and that's all personnel policies, by the way. They analyze our personnel policies and they figure that we needed around 26 different procedures. We believe it's not really necessary, not all of those. For example, procedure to request leave. Well, we have a sick leave policy. And of course, each department has their own take on how they're gonna receive that leave request and what they're gonna consider so they can issue that. So we don't believe we need a procedure for that. We need a policy that provides the general guidelines for it. So those are examples of what we receive from them. So at the end, we are assessing that information. A lot of that we are reworking. Policies are all in place as long as they're not superseded. So they're outdated in the sense that they are not in the right format, but the content still remains the soul and the intention of whenever they were built to continue guiding BPUB through its life and cycles. So we are tackling 3 policies per year, meaning that we're doing a full revamp, looking into it. And the process is not only about just changing wording. We have to go through a process of creating a policy committee, do a full review, then go to senior management for opinion, back and forth. Then we take it to our legal counsel so they can assess that we're not doing anything that we shouldn't be in place. Some policies are easier than others, so we might be able to tackle more policies, but some do have to have that legal counsel. Let's say our military leave policy. Well, there's changes to law, and then we do have federal law, we do have Texas law, and we need to make sure that we're in compliance with some of these policies. So that's the reason why they have this many steps. But again, our policies are in place. They've been in place. They guide BPUB through its life, and we are tackling 3 per year as a big challenge. Again, some are more complex than others. Some it's just a one-pager. You know, some have to do with how many hours you can accrue, how many hours you can take with you. When is the cutoff? Why was it a cutoff? Do we need to change it? How many employees we still have that belong to it? So there's a lot of, thought that goes into that and revision. So that's the reason why we're tackling 3 as a challenging. Right now, we're working on the sick leave policy. We're working on the FMLA policy. We're working on the vacation policy. And we are currently working on the overtime policy, which has to do with another finding in an audit. So those are our 4 projects that we're tackling this year. And again, they're all ambitious projects. I don't know if that provides a response to the question.
Really, I mean, those
Okay.
policies are already set, right? I mean,
Yes.
you're using these policies.
Sorry?
You're already using these current.
Yes.
So what changes are you making to the policies as far as, when you say formatting? But
That's been already done. So there was a new format that was in place. We've not transitioned all the policies. So when you see that they're not compliant or outdated, means that they're not in the new format. So that was something that we've not updated. That's been done. We still need to take it to policy committee so they can validate that they have the new format, but that's what it means by outdated. What we're doing, the revision is, again, looking into the details. For example, think of an example of a sick leave policy.
But you're not making any changes to the sick leave policy. You're just.
No, not for, yes, we are proposing changes that we need to review. For example, on the sick leave policy, you take sick leave to take care of your parents and your kids. Well, what about your grandparents if you live with them? Can you take sick leave to take care of them? Or what about your in-laws? They happen to live with you. By whatever reason, can you take care of them? So those are questions that we need to ask and see if that's something that needs to go in our policy or not. Those are the type of questions that are not in there that we are assessing if they need to be. So we look into other policies, into we benchmark against other institutions so we can provide a recommendation on that front. Would that clarify what we're looking at?
Seems like you might be stretching it a little too thin and maybe trying to answer questions. You might have too many questions to answer as opposed to making it a standardized policy. I'm not too sure how the procedure works,
Mhm.
but I'm sure that there has to be some sort of standard policy. And then maybe these other options need to be reviewed. I don't know what the procedure is. That's what I'm asking.
But we have a
It seems
standard policy.
To be a lot of questions that you might be asking, because if you're gonna sit there and go, is my mother-in-law covered, or my cousin covered, or can I take that, I can see why it can take you a while to get some of these responses. And I don't know whether there's just a standardized policy and procedure that you need to follow, and then some of these other outlying factors would be reviewed as a case-by-case basis. I'm not too sure. I'm just expressing my thoughts as to what I think.
Yeah,
And I just understand why it would take you 3 policies a year, when maybe some of these policies are pretty much standard and you can move through them. And I don't know if you're looking at too many questions outside of those policies that you're trying to answer and incorporate into your document. So I don't know if there's a standardized policy and procedure, and then maybe some of these outlying questions are reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Again, I'm just expressing my thoughts.
and if I may just, I might have misexplained myself. So we do have policies and they're all in place. We have a sick leave policy, we have a FMLA policy. That's in place. They're there. That's standard and they're in place, they're being followed and used. When we say we're going to tackle 3 policies, that means going into that in-depth analysis where we do those questions. But they're all in place. We all know our policies. We follow them. Yes, if there's a change in law that needs to be addressed, we'll address it.
Sure.
For sure, that's happening on a yearly, daily basis. But that in-depth analysis that I was describing, that's the commitment for 3 a year, where we look in depth into them to see if there's any change that needs to be updated. Again, changing the soil, if I may use the same analogy. That's so. How often does a company review their policies? Maybe the standard question. Typically, policies are not reviewed unless there's a change in law that is the soul of it. So there isn't really a lot of changes to policy in general. That's how come we have that challenge of doing just 3 per year. Yes, sir.
Does PUB or Melly, does PUB have a responsible designated party for record management, records and retention policies? Do we have, I know y'all work with a lot of consultants in legal in the past. Does anyone in-house, is anyone in-house responsible for that?
You have Nancy Bello, but she's not ultimately responsible. So like, let's say Sergio finishes one of his policies, he'll send it to Nancy for review. Correct?
Yes.
Then once that review, but then you have them find that Nancy is getting policies and procedures from 60+ departments. So that's where things get boggled up also. So it's the process of, my recommendation would be bring somebody in, help with this, because it's a continuous issue throughout the whole company, not only in HR, but throughout the whole company.
So some of the comments Ms. Sines was making, I agree. I know there should be uniform policies in place. The policies adjust and they're updated based on a new law, whether it's local, state, or board policy. I don't understand an organization this well-staffed and funded, why we're always catching up. I'm going to ask Ms. Minor to work. Is this department under your new supervision? It'll transition to general counsel. And that doesn't, yeah, I just think that, I think you need to take a hard look at this. I think you need to work with the CEO and our legal counsel that's available. I don't believe that 3 policies a year. I think, you know, maybe 90 days from now, we need to really be up to date. This is a $240 million budget. I think there's some really important consultants, and I think there's perhaps some consultants that are what I call not as essential. But policy should be updated all the time. Now, large organizations, in my experience, they have a department that's designated and they're responsible for continuous updating and to ensure that policies are not. We wouldn't be talking about this if there wasn't any findings as to what is going on. So I think Ms. Minor understands what I'm talking about and which direction we need to go. I don't believe 3 policies a year. I think in 90 days, everything should be up to date. I think it's possible. I think there's a lot of smart people here that can do it. I just think that audit meetings should not, in an organization of this size, how many employees we have?
582.
All right, less than 600 employees. The most complicated part of all this is our assets and our different divisions. But I think we should be up to date. I do believe, and I said this before, that PUB's been under transition the last 3 or 4 or 5 months, going in a new direction. The staff needs to understand that it's not going in the same direction as before. COVID is over. And having these meetings for so many findings, and I understand Mr. Sampaio, is it a critical finding or is it just here? I don't understand why there's so many and why the departments are not in compliance. And I do understand your comments about the policies as you guys try to keep up with them, but I think Ms. Minor, I think there needs to be really an aggressive focus on bringing all these policies up to date. Now, the different divisions that have deficiencies, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about HR should be up to date. Sick leave, military leave, family leave. That information is pretty standard. So I would hope, Ms. Minor, that you team up with your team and see what we can do to have a really positive report 90 days from now.
Yeah, if I may just offer a clarification. We brought all our policies to standard format already. We're just pending a policy committee so we can pass them through. So that's been addressed.
And
So
we
that
appreciate,
finding that we see often where they're not in standard format or outdated, should be resolved in the next days.
Mr. Doglio, just so you'll know, all this information, these documents, they're not ours. They belong to PUB, they belong to the public and the people reading this. This is very important. And if we're going to move PUB in a really strong, positive direction, we have to show that we are. If we're just doing the same thing and kind of grinding it out, it's not a good look. It's not a good perception. It's not a good image. It doesn't show that we're being efficient. And that's a concern. It's a concern for me. But I do believe that there's a lot of good staff here. And I do believe that y'all can tackle this and bring it up to date.
Okay.
Will it be perfect? I don't think we're all mortals. It's not a perfect organization, but I think it become much more efficient. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Melanie, what's the next item that you were going to present?
Yes, sir. So moving on to the cross connection control, this is the second follow-up that we do.
Right.
So on this one, we do still have 2 items in progress. So on the enforcement requirements, Mr. Vicente did give you all an update as of 5/24. So we do have 939 commercial and or industrial non-compliant, and we still have 236 residential non-compliant. I do want to mention that Mr. Vicente Guerrero did mention that they did do a query for any customer that has 10 valves or more, and they identified 7 of them with 375 valves that are non-compliant, or 40% of the 939.
We talked about this before, and a bulk of this is with our public school system.
Yes, sir.
All right, is Ms. Minor aware of this?
Yes, very, very minimal.
I know you got to catch up on this, and this is one of our public school systems that's, we're communicating with and trying to work with to resolve this matter. They have how many, Melly, of all these? More or
Do you have
less.
That number, Vicente?
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I didn't hear your question.
We're talking about the public school system, which is
How many-
BISD. They seem to be,
Yes. With respect to the,
The ones that are remaining, those are different people, right?
different ones.
with, ma'am?
The ones that are remaining, the 939.
How many?
242.
We have 176.
Out of compliance. Out of-
We have
out of
176 valves. We are working with them. We've met with them. They've come up with a plan of action. They're in the process of getting a PO to address these non-compliant valves. So we have been working with BISD.
That's good. And I think it's important for us to communicate with them very gently and carefully and in a positive way. And
Mhm.
there are partners. But that's a lot of valves that are out of compliance. I know you guys are working hard to try to bring them in and so they are in compliance. And the other ones, Ms. Sines, you mentioned?
So that number, is that part of the 939?
Yes, yes.
The
Mhm.
ones that are remaining?
Yeah,
ma'am.
there's,
What are we doing with the rest of the customers? I know we don't.
We've have another customer, they're in the process of investing over $100 million into their facility. So some of these valves, they're gonna be, I guess, replacing or removing. So the plan is once they get the facility up to date, it needs to go through a final inspection. We'll do a customer service inspection, and if anything is pending, we'll address it there.
Does
Okay.
that go for everybody or you have different customers?
Another customer that we have, I guess, is owner of PUB. They have 99 valves that are non-compliant, and we need to work with them we do their testing. However, some of these valves are inoperable, they're broken, so we need to decide if their need is still the same. Are they going to require that valve to be in place, or can that valve, be removed from our compliance tracking system? So we'll be working with this entity to try to see whether they still need those valves.
How many more entities do you have out of that 939?
I have, once again, we focus on entities that are greater than 10 non-compliance. There were seven entities that equated to 40% of that 939.
40%.
So it's a big percentage, just those 7 customers.
I think it is important because it does affect our water system, that they
Mhm.
need to be in compliance. There shouldn't be any reason for them not to have been under compliance. And I know that we've addressed this issue already several times, so I'm wondering if we could set some sort of, based on what you're saying, is set some sort of timeline to address some of these issues on a much.
Well, we do have a mechanism. It's called the customer service agreement that we can utilize. There's 2 options. Either disconnect the customer from the water services, or essentially test the valve and back charge the customers. We have a meeting with Spencer and Thane tomorrow to discuss these valves. They're not PUB owned valves. So as far as financial ramifications, we're gonna ask the attorney whether we can go ahead and move forward. We did get a legal opinion from Davidson Torillo, our previous attorney, that customer service agreement can be utilized. I guess the question is, are we going to move forward with the water service agreement, enforcing of the water service agreement? Meaning, are we going to disconnect customers, or are we going to test and back charge? That's the underlying. In order for us to be 100% compliant, those are the options that we have. That's what we're dealing with. Our department doesn't have the authority to, give violations or give fines. That's a function of the city. The city, I've engaged the city numerous times and, they're stretched. They cannot assist us. So, they want us to go ahead and utilize or, in their words, and I'll quote them.
I think this is a,
I think that they need to exhaust all the procedures, right?
Yeah.
To get to the customer and work with the customer.
We
And then if
do,
you get to a certain point where the customer is not responsive or doesn't want to work with you,
Mhm.
I think you need to approach management and figure out the course of action.
yeah. Our staff does go out there and educate our customers. Our system is, we give them 3 notices. First notice for testing is done within 30 days. If we don't receive the test amendments report, 15 days thereafter is the second notice. Another 15 days, we give the third notice. After that, then our staff member goes out to the customer, and, meets with the customer and educates them on the importance of that particular valve, how it protects our drinking water supply.
what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I think the major entities there, it's not like you can cut them off, right? We're not gonna cut off the city or BISD. It's a matter of sitting down
Yeah,
and
working on it.
and saying, hey, we can do this for you if you need to.
Mhm.
Put a number on it, but it has to get done. And
Yes,
if they
sir.
need our help, then we need to provide it. We can't have the city's water supply be at risk, or, punt that to another entity. Ultimately, it's our job. Even if it's their valve, it's our job to keep the water supply safe, right?
Yeah. And,
we do that.
the majority of these valves, they're low hazard valves. Under the state, like for example, a pressure vacuum breaker, that one you test upon installation. And the state, it's good to go. You don't have to retest it. Here, our ordinance, these are mechanical devices. They do stick, they need to be exercised. The inspection needs to be performed. For commercial entities, it's every year. And for residential, it's every 3 years due to the financial impact of testing these valves. So we do have staff, we have a couple staff that we've helped out customers, and when requested. So yes, I agree with you, our drinking water supply, these valves do protect. We do focus on a lot of the high hazard facilities, the reduced pressure zones, those we do require them. Some of these valves we can't test because they're fire lines. The fire line contractor has to, they're the only ones that can test these types of valves. So, and it becomes more of a issue for the entity because if their building burns down, due to the backflow device, it's not really PUB, it's the entity that's at fault for not testing their valve and ensuring that their valve is, operable. So those are some of the high hazard facility. The fire lines are also considered because of the type of valve they're utilizing.
Well, what I'm hearing is that y'all are moving forward. You're trying to be a little more, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but trying to get people into compliance. You're communicating with Spencer Payne, our legal team. I think Ms. Minor and the administration at the top level needs to understand how far can we take this to get compliance.
Mhm.
We certainly don't want to start shutting down water supplies, but we need to get a little bit closer to see how, and we need to push the envelope a little bit more to see if we get compliance. It's y'all's job to come up with good strategies, make recommendations, communicate with one another. How are we going to get these people into compliance?
Mhm.
I think the thing about the first strike, second strike, the third strike, or we're really going to get you, I don't think that's working, man. Because they don't really, they're not listening. Is it possible that we can go out and repair some of these and replace them and then send them a bill? Or bill them? I don't-
Yeah, that's in our service agreement. When a customer comes in and signs up for a water service, customer service department does, have, the customer sign that service agreement. In the enforcement portion of that agreement, that is an option for us to go ahead and test the valves on their behalf. They might not necessarily grant us access, but the option is there to go ahead and test the valve, replace the valve if needed, make any necessary modifications, and then we essentially backbill the customer. That option is there. We will be having that meeting with,
For y'all to continue to study it with legal and
Yeah.
administration.
once again, tomorrow we have a meeting with Spencer Fain, and that's going to be one of the questions. And another thing that we're going to ask them is one of the things that Davidson Torello recommended is for us to work with the city manager, because it is a city ordinance as far as challenging. We all have to be on the same page. So we're going to have our PUB attorneys try to facilitate a meeting with the city attorney so we can all be on the same page
Okay.
and go in the same direction.
That sounds like a really good plan. Y'all continue to attack this. And hopefully we'll get something back maybe in less than 30 days.
Mhm.
Okay.
That, you gonna talk about the customer service too, or? Okay, that's one program, backflow testing. The other program is customer service inspections. When one applies for a water service, we have to have this inspection already on hand. The way the process is currently is our customers are set up with their water account, and then we essentially go to the customer's house a few days later, a few weeks later, what have you, and we do this CSI. Now, what we want to do is in our department is try to see if we can work with the planning department from the city of Brownsville. This needs to be caught up when they do a final plumbing inspection prior to issuing out a certificate of occupancy, because once you give out the certificate of occupancy, that gives them the right to come in. And if we don't have that inspection, then we're already behind the 8 ball as far as requiring, and this inspection is required in order to approve or deny water services. So once a customer is already connected, we're behind as far as compliance was.
I might have to talk to the city about making that a prerequisite. I know when I've been through the planning of a new construction, either residential, commercial, PB's invited. And the city has a new concept now, and there's a lot of meetings before construction at the planning phase. And I know PUB was there on a project that I worked on, but it was primarily for the meters connection, not necessarily for what you're talking about. So maybe that could be incorporated into that planning stage, particularly for new construction, residential and commercial.
Any other questions you have for me?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, Melly, what's your next item?
Yes, sir. So moving on to the electric engineering. So this was a request to do a follow-up within 3 months of the final report. We had identified 23 findings. 13 have already been implemented and 10 continue to be in progress. Would you like for me to go into the in progress and why they're still in progress, or?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So on the first one, on the electric water and wastewater service policies manual, this item has been a repeat finding for the past 10 years. We brought it up since 2013. It's been taken to legal several times. What the electric department or electric management has done is they've broken the portion, they've separated the manual into 2 separate portions. Now they're going to have the electric and they're going to have the water and wastewater. It's been updated and separated, but it's pending to be taken to the Regulatory and Policy Committee and the BPUB board approval. So that's what's pending on that one.
But see, Melody, at the beginning of your comments, you're talking about, what year was that?
2013, sir.
Now, that's difficult to understand, again, for a very sophisticated organization as PV. It's really hard to understand. And it's another note that Ms. Minor needs to really pay attention to discuss with upper management on how to get this corrected. Every employee, I'm sure at all levels are important. But they need to do their job to make sure that we're in compliance. 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, I don't know. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. But go
Okay.
ahead, Melanie.
So moving on to the procedures, during the audit, we identified 8 draft procedures not in format and or updated, and we also identified 5 additional processes that have not been documented. So on this one, documents are still in progress. Moving on to the billing inefficiencies. These are for the customers that come in to customer service or engineering to request a security light. An agreement is created and then a service order is created. So during testing, we identified that there's 1,750 security light service orders that have not been created since November of 2019 for light replacements, both for either customers and or the city of Bronzeville. So one of the things that had to do with that was the lack of communication between the electric engineering and the warehouse due to the type of light not being entered in the system. We did follow up and 15% as of April the 14th have been completed from the 1,750.
Your numbers person.
That's not good. But those are lights that were installed, but you just hadn't been.
We haven't billed the customers since 2019. So customer might get a bill for
2 years, 3
for
years.
2 years or 3 years or for 1 month or depending on when they came in.
See, the customers won't be happy.
Is there a timeline in addressing the rest of them that are remaining?
Is it fair?
Have you figured out how you're gonna address the rest of them?
Yes, actually, we did recommend to hire a temporary person to help us with this. Luckily, we find a former employee that is familiar with the process, the programs and all of that systems that we had to take care of this. I just want to clarify that this is not the security lights that are not being built. It's basically a security light that's been replaced with LED. We have existing contracts with many customers. So the new rule for us is to replace with LED lights, not the HPS. So our construction staff, our main staff, they are replacing those and they doing service requests. So these are 1,000+ service requests. It's basically because they replaced the old light with the LED. So now they we need to go out to each account and update their the billing with the new rates, which is going to be less. So everyone will see a credit. And as of now, it's the 15% that we have and 25% for the.
Yes, so if I may, so we're talking about 2 different things here. We're talking about the customers that pay for a security light. And then we're talking about the city of Bronzeville, who has security lights and street lights. So in addition, there's 5,340 street lights that belong to the city of Bronzeville that were replaced with LED, like Mr. Cesar mentioned, which is the rate is lower. However, we haven't been billing them accurately. And that's the 25% that he's referring to.
Yeah, so it's so the 3 findings go together, 4, 6, and 7.
That's what you mentioned. If you all engage or employed a part-time person, that person would help you.
But I'm actually also, since I'm in charge of the construction, also I'm identifying a maintenance worker to help this employee so they don't have to go out in the field and do inspections. So basically we have a crew, field inspector, which is one of the job descriptions I'm working with HR to get an internal inspector.
I understand from where I'm sitting, you're saying a part-time employee can help alleviate this, but yet this has been going on for a long time. I just think the administration, I mean, you guys are all smart guys, you know what to do. we need to be a little more proactive. Y'all need to get a little more aggressive with this. You shouldn't come to these audit meetings with these type of issues. And when you tell me a part-time person can come in and help alleviate a lot of this, that's all it's gonna take, one. Okay.
Actively.
All right, Ms. Minor, I know you're listening to all this, and perhaps y'all can address this. And I know hiring someone is not like you hire them tomorrow. There's a process, or whatever. Does it impact the budget and all that? But I'm sure Ms. Minor can speak to HR and perhaps give you some support on this. The customers that might be billed for a year or 2 years, that's going to be a sore. Perhaps y'all need to take a look and see if they're being billed because of our lack of doing our work. They're going to be billed a year, 2, 3 years behind. And then they have to pay the full amount.
It's not that they're paying for the code.
But they're not receiving
They're not the right rate. So it's gonna be less. So eventually they're gonna get a credit.
Sergio, I'm sorry, I always call you Sergio. Says that it's both type. We can either overbill or underbill. During testing, that's what we identified.
Well, again, I would hope that this very capable staff can start taking this a little bit more serious and start addressing it and start alleviating these issues. I would hope that if Cessa needs someone to help him, believes that's going to make a big difference, that Ms. Minor can talk to HR and they can not circumvent policy, but they can bring somebody on board to help. I wish this would have been discussed 6 months ago, that a part-time employee can help so much, but now the raise difference.
So that ties in with the next finding, which is the security light records log for the security. So what we identified is that the log is not maintained. The type, size, and quantities are inaccurate. So if that log is your source of where you're going to bill, if that's inaccurate, then.
Amelie, we appreciate the reporting and it's important. From my standpoint, there's some work to be done. We can listen to all this. And again, I think it's full transparency here. We need to catch up. We need to be a little more aggressive. The administration, I'm sure Ms. Minor's listening to all this. Some of these issues could perhaps be resolved pretty quickly. I certainly don't want to see this 3 months from now, the same issues. We haven't moved very far. Now, some of the rates, y'all need to work that out and understand it. And be fair to the customers, whether it's residential, or commercial. The lights being changed from one type of light to another. So as an engineer, there's other engineers on staff. It has to be resolved. Sandra, what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I think they need to be addressed probably, since there's some sort of timeline. Hopefully you'll get the necessary help that you need to address some of these things. Seems like it's an easy fix, right? Easy in the sense that it's doable.
It's tedious work. It's just
It's just a matter of going in and doing it. So hopefully you'll get the assistance that you need to help you out. And let's just set a timeline for ourselves so that we don't drag this any longer and focus on trying to get this done as quickly as possible.
yeah, we do. We do have a timeline there. Basically, we want to have this done. I think it's September. But again, we have the new. It's probably like 2 weeks. See how that comes, and I think we can get a better time once.
We understand that. We appreciate y'all's efforts, but again, this is not about anything other than checks and balances. It's critical. The organization cannot function without auditing. But again, there's a lot of smart people here. They run these departments. They've been here for a long time. I think maybe some old habits need to go out the window. Some new processes, new fresh motivation needs to be inserted. But all right, Melly, what's the
So real quick on the invoice verification process, I know we have it up there 3 times, but it's for 3 different services and I'll go through it real quickly. One of it is for the utility locator service. That one, we have a contract of a value of 455,000. We also have the pole inspection and line ground for 189,000 and the pole attachment process for 289,000. So these 3 are similar where we've identified that, the roles and responsibilities are not being followed as far as going out there and ensuring that this work is actually being performed. They have started doing spot checks. An employee has been assigned, correct, to go out there and spot check these different vendors to ensure that what we're getting billed is accurate. So that's for that.
One thing I did on this funding is the charter care and job position. It's electric program coordinator. So he, because engineers doing electrical designs, taking care of these various programs, contracts and contractors. So it's very difficult for them to be designing the house and then have time to go out and do inspections. They're doing that because we have to do them. But without that, it's best to have 1 person or 2 persons. There's like 4 or 5 programs, contracts that we had to manage that have been transferred to electrical team in construction. So now they're going to have the responsibility to hire. It's already out posted on the website, and hopefully get candidates for that position. And it's a learning curve. We gotta sit down with each of the program supervisors right now so they can learn the processes. I think it's just that it's been there too, that we had to manage contracts and do designs and all of that. So
So you know that we're the stewards of this budget. That's part of our responsibilities. I hear these numbers on these contracts. My brief experience with contractors are, they get a contract, they get paid X amount. The work should be monitored, the beginning, the middle, the end, or throughout. When you take your eyes off, and but they're very quick at submitting invoices, with all due respect. But it's our job to make sure that what the contract states, timelines is being adhered to. Again, this is serious business. This money belongs to the ratepayers. You guys are in charge of some serious responsibilities. I hear some of the numbers on these contracts.
yes,
And I'm gonna talk to how much minor these situations need to be addressed. Previously, I heard the vacancy, there's a huge vacancy list here at PUB. And I've spoken to this with Ms. Gilbert. Some of these positions can be collapsed and be recreated, but it requires a team effort with a CFO, with a CEO, with yourself. But certainly needs to be addressed, and we'd like to hear something different in 90 days on this matter.
Okay, so moving on to the facility maintenance annex. On this one, both actually have been implemented. They did finalize the procedures on April 17 of this year. And then just real quick on the inaccurate invoice approvals, BPUB did receive a credit of $60,000 that was billed inaccurately, so PUB got that money.
How much was that?
60,000, sir.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah, we talked about that.
So they applied credit to the bills instead of actually giving a check.
Right, but we caught that. or-
Internal audit did, sir.
So they didn't really pay us back. We just
No,
got a
sir.
credit.
That's correct.
I wish we would get the real check for that.
And I agree with you, but management took the decision to get a credit.
Good job for them.
Thank you, ma'am.
That was,
Well, thank you, Ms. Norma Torres. She's very diligent with what she does on the testing. Sometimes it takes us a little longer, but these are the things that we identify. And then moving on to the overtime company-wide, that's the one that Mr. Delgadillo mentioned that they're also working on. This one is for the overtime policies and procedures. They are at 50% completed and should be finalized by September of 2023. And then once the procedure is finalized, it'll be sent to records management for review and then taken to the policy committee for review to finalize that document.
okay.
Any further questions?
It's been a lovely meeting. Any comments? Again, I'd like to, as a board member, I'd like to articulate to the staff and to those who are here, that we have a serious responsibility here. We either come to the meetings, we come prepared to assist and to execute our duties, or we pretend that everything is A-okay. We just go to lunch. But you all have a lot of responsibilities to oversee. I did write something down. I just wanted to comment, audit division, their responsibility, their job is probably not the very attractive. And there's probably a lot of people that perhaps are sore because all this is reported. But it's an incredibly major function for this organization, all organizations. We don't have an audit division with checks and balances, asking questions. The organization can really get out of control. I appreciate the work that the Melly does. And of course, I appreciate all the employees that are here. Now it's our job to improve it. It's ratepayer money. We have to be a little bit more conscious of this. These contracts, these contractors, they're our associates. They're not our friends. And it's strictly business. Sandra, any comments? Would you like to say anything?
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Sampaio?
Nope, good.
Nothing else, Millie?
No, sir.
We appreciate your work and we appreciate all those who are here. Ms. Minor, thank you for your time. And this meeting is concluded. It's over. Thank you.